As you saw, Charlie Hart is a range and pasture development specialist with Dow AgroSciences. And Charlie, thanks for spending a little time with us today.
You bet, Kevin.
You know, in addition to managing prickly pear, as cattlemen begin trying to find ways to expand the cow herd, what else should they be considering in improving the quality of their forages?
All right, Kevin, as we talked about with the prickly pear, one of the things that causes problems with is access to forage. Okay, from a brush control standpoint, that can be a big problem. We get thick, heavy brush, whether that be prickly pear, briars, or buckbrush, or any of the types of species that are around that limit access to forage. So brush control can help really get more access to forage. But another part of that are weeds and species that compete for moisture with forages. So anytime we can take moisture away from undesirable plants and give it to desirable plants, and we can produce more grazable forage for our livestock.
Well, speaking of moisture, clearly Texas has been through several years of drought, but as we can see, starting 2015, very, very different. What does adequate moisture mean in terms of both weed species that you have to deal with as well as the grass itself?
That's a great question, and a question we get asked a lot, Kevin. And the answer is really that you know, our pastures are kind of in bad shape, if you will, from coming out of such a severe drought, especially down here. Mother Nature threw us a pretty hard curveball, and when we come out of a drought and we start getting moisture, some of those mobile type annuals, the weedy type annuals, are the first things to come back, and they're there again, like we talked about, competing for that moisture. And if we don't control those weeds, then that moisture that could be going back to growing grass and recovery of our grass is going to the weed crop. And that, from a cattleman's standpoint, is really worthless. We need to put that moisture back into the grass production, let those grasses recover. Coming out of a drought is an extremely critical time for us, because we've got to get not only the production back, but the vigor of those grasses. That's our forage base. That's what we make our money on.
So talk to us, whether as a rancher in Texas or some other part of the country, what advice would you give folks that want to expand their herds and use forage to do it?
Well, in terms of coming out of this drought, with the prices the way they are, obviously everybody's wanting to put more cattle out and bring more cattle and increase their herd size. The thing that I would caution people is, number one, make sure your pastures are ready for it. The worst thing we can do coming out of a drought is restock too early and bring in cattle that are going to make it just go backwards again, if you will, and not be able to recover our pastures. So make sure that your pastures are ready. And one of the things, or a few of the things you can do to help make sure they're ready is to control some of the unwanted brush species, control some of the unwanted weed species, make more grazable acres available for those grazing animals. A lot of our brush control strategies help us do that. They make land that was not accessible to cattle for grazing accessible by removing those species.
Thanks, Charlie, for your perspective. We'll be talking to you just a little later as well.
Thank you, Kevin.